I needed a break. A weekend retreat seemed perfect after my breakup. The cabin was tiny and cozy, tucked among tall pines. A lake shimmered nearby. I thought it would be peaceful, but that feeling didn't last long. I unpacked my things. The inside felt still, just me and the woods. The first evening I took a walk by the lake, breathing in the fresh air. My mind started to clear. I cooked dinner, then settled in for the night. It was around midnight when I first heard it. A faint tapping on the window. I glanced over and thought it might be a branch moving in the wind. Still, a chill ran down my spine. I tried to go to sleep, but it was impossible. The tapping grew louder the next night. I convinced myself it was nothing, so I put on some music and worked on my sketches. I focused hard to drown out the sounds. By the third day, things felt different. I noticed strange carvings on the walls. They looked like twisted symbols, something ancient. When I blinked, they almost seemed to move. I told myself I was just tired. That evening, I realized small items started to disappear. My book vanished from the table. Instead, I found an old, cracked mirror sitting there. I glared at it, a deep dread knotting in my stomach. Had someone else been here? I felt cold, like eyes were watching me. My nights turned restless. I kept seeing shadows flitting between the trees. Each time, my heart raced. I wanted to convince myself I was imagining things. I sat by the window, peeking through the curtain, waiting for the next sound. Then the tapping changed to knocking. It was stronger, more urgent. I froze. Should I open the door? I took a deep breath, my hands shaking. I approached the door, feeling the wind howl around me. My heart thundered. When I finally opened the door, there was nothing. Just darkness and mist swirling at my feet. I felt something chilly brush against my neck like a whisper. My feet carried me outside. The words, "hello," escaping my lips into the empty air. Nothing. Just silence. Then I heard a voice, soft and haunting, drifting from behind the trees. "Why are you here?" It sounded both curious and threatening. I turned, panic setting in. But no one was there. I stood there, my mind racing. Should I leave? Should I stay and face whatever was hidden in the woods? I took a step back toward the cabin, but my feet felt stuck to the ground. The mist thickened, and those twisted symbols from the walls rushed back into my mind. I gulped, unsure of my next move. A part of me wanted to run, to get away from whatever was in the dark, but the other part wanted to know. The cabin felt alive, whispering secrets I couldn't grasp. I took a deep breath, ready to step back inside or face the shadows. The choice lingered, heavy in the fog. What would I choose? I stood there, torn. My heart thudded in my chest, but curiosity gnawed at me. I should have turned back. I should have locked the door. Instead, I took a step toward the trees. The fog wrapped around my ankles like icy fingers. I strained to hear the voice again. It felt like the trees themselves were holding their breath. "Why are you here?" echoed in my mind. I wanted to answer, but the words tangled in my throat. Then I noticed something on the ground. A small, shining object poked out of the mist. I bent down, my fingers trembling as I picked it up. It was a locket. Where did this come from? I opened it with a click. Inside was a faded photograph of a woman, her eyes piercing through the years. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. My stomach twisted. A sense of dread washed over me. Why was it here? The forest felt alive around me. I turned, half expecting to see someone watching from the shadows. But there was nothing. Just darkness, broken only by the pale moonlight. The voice returned, louder now. "Why are you here?" It felt less curious and more accusing. "Just looking for some peace," I shouted back, the sound echoing in the stillness. Anger surged through me. I was tired of being afraid. But without an answer, I felt ridiculous. The mist parted for a moment, revealing the dark silhouette of a structure in the distance, hidden behind the trees. It was old, almost like a shrine. I inched closer, compelled by some force I didn't understand. The locket felt heavy in my pocket. As I reached the edge of the clearing, I spotted the symbols again, carved into the stone wall surrounding the shrine. They were identical to the ones I had seen in the cabin, twisting and writhing like snakes. My pulse quickened. I had to know what they meant. More than ever, I felt that if I could decipher the symbols, I might understand why my things had gone missing, why I was here. Before I could think it through, I reached out and touched the wall. My fingertips brushed against the cool stone, and a sudden rush of images flooded my mind. I saw glimpses of the past, laughter, sorrow, and shadows dancing eerily around the fire. It all felt wrong, as if I was intruding on something that belonged to another time. Suddenly, the mist thickened again, and the shadows flickered around me. I stumbled back, my breath hitching. That was when I sensed a presence behind me. A figure, barely visible in the fog, moved silently. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. Then I heard the voice again, but this time it was more urgent, almost pleading. "You shouldn't have come here." I spun around, the locket clattering to the ground. The figure stepped closer, and a cold wave of terror rushed over me. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its gaze penetrating through the mist. My instincts kicked in, and I turned to flee. But as I ran, I heard a whisper right behind me. "You can't escape the past." The words sent a shiver down my spine. I dashed back to the cabin, hoping to lock the door and hide. But dread settled in my gut because I knew I hadn't seen the last of whatever haunted this place. I needed to find answers. The moon hung higher as I burst through the cabin door, slamming it shut behind me. My heart raced, and I fumbled with the lock, desperate to feel secure. But in the stillness that followed, doubt crept in. The cabin was too quiet. The wind had stilled, and the only sound was my uneven breathing. I needed to calm down. I took a deep breath and glanced around the dimly lit room. Everything felt off-kilter. The walls seemed to close in on me, and shadows danced around the edges, threatening to swallow me whole. The locket was still heavy in my pocket, as if it had a weight of its own. What was that thing? I whispered to myself. Memories of the figure and its haunting words clawed at my mind. You can't escape the past. I had to know more about the locket and the shrine. I couldn't push the feeling away that they were connected somehow. I hurried to the small table where my things lay scattered. My laptop waited there, a flicker of hope in this dark moment. I flipped it open and powered it on, impatience tight in my chest. I had a story to unravel, a mystery begging to be uncovered. As the screen lit up, I searched for information about the area, any records of the shrine or the symbols. Minutes passed like hours as I scrolled through articles and forums. Nothing felt right. Everything seemed to brush over the disturbing aspects of this place. Maybe I was just being paranoid. "Come on," I muttered, frustration rising. That was when I heard it. A faint tapping sound, rhythmic and persistent. I froze, straining to listen. It was coming from the window. Slowly, I turned my head. The fog outside gathered closer, thickening like a living entity, and there in the dim light, I saw a figure standing just beyond the glass. My breath caught in my throat, and my fingers hovered over the keyboard. Was it real, or was I just imagining things? I inched closer to the window, curiosity battling fear. The figure was vague, shrouded in mist. I squinted, trying to make out its details, but the fog clung to it like a shroud. Then it raised an arm, pointing directly at me. A wave of panic rushed over me. This was it. This was what I was afraid of, something from the past trying to reach me. I stumbled back and nearly knocked over the chair. Then my laptop beeped, the screen brightening with an article I hadn't noticed before. The title read, "Local Legends, the Lost Shrines and Their Guardians." I glanced back at the window. The figure still remained, but the urge to know more clawed at me. With trembling hands, I returned to the screen. As I scanned the text, a chill swept through me. The article spoke of guardians, spirits bound to protect the secrets of the shrines. They were said to be the souls of those who died in the woods, still searching for something lost. Just a story, I told myself, but the shadows danced once again, the figure outside lingering like a promise of something dark. That's when I saw it, a flicker of movement in the corner of my vision. The door creaked open slightly. No one should have been there. The feeling of dread washed over me, and I realized whatever had been lost was about to be found, and not just in stories. I held my breath, the faint creak of the door echoing like a gunshot in the silent cabin. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist around me, as if alive and eager to absorb the evening's growing tension. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, drowning out all rational thought. What was in the darkness beyond that door? I squinted, willing my eyes to adjust, but the details remained blurry. The figure outside was still there, unmoving, pointing at me like a silent accusation. I should have felt terrified, yet curiosity gnawed at me, whispering for me to investigate. I took a tentative step forward, my feet betraying my better judgment. The laptop screen flickered ominously, the article open right where I had left it. "Guardians," I whispered. "But why me?" I scanned the page again, looking for anything that might shed light on the connection. Just then, I heard another sound, a shuffling noise from behind the half-open door. My stomach turned. "Is someone there?" I forced the words out, my throat tight. Silence answered me. The only movement was the figure outside, still pointing, and the air seemed thick with expectation. As sweat trickled down my back, I felt an urge to regain control. I moved closer to the door and pushed it, just enough to peek through the small gap. The cabin felt like a trap, and I was the prey waiting for the unseen predator. Nothing. The layer of fog obscured everything beyond the threshold. "I just have to look," I muttered, trying to reassure myself. In a moment of foolish bravery, I swung the door open wider, ready to confront whatever haunted me. Nothing met my gaze. The hallway outside was empty. My heart raced as I stepped cautiously across the threshold. Just then, a chill cut through the air. I glanced back at the window. The fog swirled, and the figure had vanished. I let out a shaky breath. Good riddance, I thought, but the relief was short-lived. The door slammed shut behind me. Panic surged. I rushed to try and open it, but it wouldn't budge. "No, no, no," I cried, rattling the knob. Too late, I realized my mistake. I had left my laptop inside. I turned to the hallway, unsure what lay ahead, but knowing I had to move. The shadows felt thicker here. My thoughts raced as I retraced my steps, thinking of the article and the unsettling mention of guardians watching over lost souls. That's when I heard it again. A laughter, high-pitched and childlike, curling around me like smoke. I froze, grappling with the impossible. Who or what was in here with me? The laughter faded into soft whispers that swirled through the cabin walls. I turned, but there was only darkness. "Show yourself," I shouted, the bravado in my voice feeling hollow. Then a flicker of light appeared down the end of the hallway. I followed it, instinct pulling me closer. The light drew me in, but a deep sense of dread stayed glued in my stomach. What if it led me to something worse? I pressed forward anyway, the whispers intertwining with my racing thoughts. As I reached the source of the light, my breath hitched. A mirror hung on the wall, glowing faintly, but what reflected back wasn't just my frightened image. Behind me stood a figure, face obscured by the shadows. My heart dropped. I finally understood. The past was not finished with me yet. I blinked at the reflection in the mirror, my heart racing. The figure behind me was only a silhouette, yet it loomed over me like a dark cloud. I felt trapped, caught between reality and whatever haunted this place. Was it some kind of trick of the light? Or something worse? I turned around slowly, dread coursing through me like ice. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to sound brave. The hallway stretched behind me, empty and oppressive. I took a step back toward the mirror, drawn as if it was magnetized. The figure had not moved, but I felt its weight pressing on my shoulders. Before I could second-guess myself, I reached for the mirror. Something within it shimmered, and I could almost swear the glass rippled under my fingers. I pulled my hand back, startled. This was madness. I needed to escape, not get pulled into some dark, alternate world. Just then, a voice broke through the silence, a whisper, soft yet distinct. "Help me." The plea sent chills down my spine. I scanned the space again, hoping to find the source. I felt a rush of emotion, fear, empathy, confusion. "Who are you?" The whispers returned, swirling around me. Help. Me. It seemed to rise and fall like a lullaby, seductive yet terrifying. I fought against the urge to succumb to it. No! I shouted, anger mixing with panic. I won't help! The laughter echoed again, but this time it felt closer, like a child standing right behind me. I whirled around, blood pounding in my ears. Nothing. Just the darkness. My heart raced, and instinct kicked in. I dashed down the hallway, desperate to find a way out, to escape whatever was lurking in the cabin. I skidded to a halt as I reached a door at the far end. With trembling hands, I opened it and stepped inside. The room was small and dimly lit, with just enough light escaping through a grimy window to reveal a table cluttered with books and papers. My heart sank as I recognized some of the titles. They were filled with stories about guardians, lost souls, and hauntings. Was this where it all began? My eyes scanned the room frantically. Then I noticed a photo stuck to the wall. I walked closer, a sense of foreboding wrapping around me. It was a picture of children playing in the woods near a cabin that looked eerily similar to mine. The kids were smiling, their faces frozen in bliss. But in the corner, blended with the shadows, was a figure resembling the one from the mirror. I turned to leave, but as I did, the door slammed shut. The air turned cold, and a voice, sharp and demanding, called out, "You shouldn't be here." My heart sank further. I bolted towards the door, but it wouldn't budge. "Please, let me out," I yelled, panic clawing at my throat. The grip of fear tightened around me, and I pressed my ear against the door, hoping to hear something, anything, that would guide me. Then, in a voice that chilled me to the core, I heard it again. "Help me." This time it wasn't the soft whisper of a child. It felt menacing, hinting at a darkness that wanted company. I stumbled back from the door, realizing it was not just the cabin that was haunted. It was me. I felt the walls closing in around me, a silent prison built of old wood and fear. The whispered plea still echoed, wrapping around me like a heavy fog. I stepped backward, my breath shallow and quick. My mind raced. I had to think of a way out. I turned to the small, cluttered table in the room. It was practically drowning in dust, but still held secrets. I rifled through the papers, hoping to find something, anything, that could explain what was happening. As I grasped one of the old books, a brittle page slipped free and fluttered to the floor. I picked it up, squinting at the faded words. It spoke of spirits trapped in limbo, searching for liberation. "Is that what you want?" I whispered to the empty room. But a cold shiver ran through me as I realized I might not be alone. The shadows seemed to dance, shifting in the corners of my vision. Without warning, the door rattled violently, the sound vibrating through the air. I gasped and jumped back, my pulse racing. It felt alive, like it was desperate to let something in or out. "Let me out!" I shouted again, but the door held fast. Then, as if in response, a small crack formed along the old wood. Dark mist seeped through, swirling into the room. It curled around my legs like tendrils, and I felt an overwhelming heaviness settle on my chest. "Help me," the voice called again, now woven with anger and despair. I could feel it clawing at my mind. I had to escape. I turned to the window, hoping it would be my salvation. It was old and barred, but the frame looked weak. I rushed over and pushed against it. The window let out a low groan. I pressed harder, willing it to budge. Thud. The door slammed again, shaking the room. The air thickened, and with each passing second, the whispers grew louder. "Help!" I pleaded into the chaos, my voice barely a squeak. I could feel something behind me. It was no longer just a presence. It felt like a force. I risked a glance over my shoulder. The figure from the mirror had materialized in the dark, its features obscured but undeniably there. A shadow threaded with malice. Panic surged through me. I heaved against the window with all my might. Then it gave, splintering the wood as it burst open. Bright moonlight flooded the room, illuminating the chaos and revealing the figure's twisted face, an apparition of sorrow and rage. I didn't think. I dove through the opening, scraping my arms against the rough wood. I landed hard outside, gasping for breath. I rolled to my feet, adrenaline igniting my flight instinct. The cool night air surrounded me, a stark contrast to the cabin's suffocating darkness. But as I turned to run, I glanced back at the open window. The figure stood there, watching me with hollow eyes, its lips twisted in a silent scream. I felt a pull to go back, to help, but I remembered the truth of its call. I couldn't let it trap me too. I sprinted into the woods, branches snagging at my clothes like claws. The shadows whispered behind me, hunting me down, desperate to reclaim what had escaped. I didn't look back. Somehow, I knew I was only beginning to uncover the horrors that cabin held, and the true nature of the darkness that had come alive. The forest was a maze of darkness, the trees towering over me like silent sentinels. I could still hear the whispers from the cabin, but they faded with each step I took away from that cursed place. Relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by a boiling dread. I needed to get away, to find safety. I stumbled over roots and rocks, each misstep echoing in the night, as if the very ground was warning me to stop. My legs ached, but I pushed through, knowing that whatever that presence was, it wasn't going to give up easily. After what felt like hours of running, I finally broke into a small clearing. The moon hung high, casting a pale light on the forest floor. I caught my breath, my chest heaving. I had to find my bearings. Glancing around, I noticed a low stone wall stretching around the edge of the clearing. It looked old, maybe remnants of a long-abandoned structure. There was something inviting about it, the stones smooth from years of neglect, the bulk promising a bit of shelter. I approached cautiously, expecting something to leap out at me from the shadows. That's when I noticed the remnants of a fire pit in the center of the clearing. Tattered bits of old newspaper lay scattered about, their yellowed edges telling tales of past gatherings. I crouched near the fire pit, hoping to center myself for a moment. But then I caught sight of a glimmer amidst the ash, something shiny poking out from below the debris. I dug through the remnants, my heart racing with hope and trepidation. Was it a clue? A weapon? I pulled it out, a small locket. It was tarnished, but the intricate carving still hinted at beauty. Gently, I opened it to find a faded photograph inside. It showed two women, smiling, their faces familiar, yet just out of reach in my memory. Confusion washed over me. Who were they? Then I noticed something else. On the other side of the locket was an inscription. It read, "Forever together, in light and shadow." A cold chill raced down my spine. Was it a message, a curse? Before I could ponder further, shadows shifted again, darting at the edge of the clearing. I stood up, scanning the tree line. My heart sank as I noticed movement, something watching me from behind the trees. It wasn't just a trick of the light. They were figures, merging with the shadows, their features indistinct, but their presence haunting. I took a step back, adrenaline surging once again. "Show yourself," I shouted, desperately trying to sound brave, but my voice came out shaky. The figures hesitated, and in that moment of stillness, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread coiling in my stomach. I turned to flee, but before I could take another step, the whispering returned, clearer this time, enveloping me in a cold embrace. "Join us." I didn't wait to see who, or what, was beckoning. I dashed back into the trees, the locket clutched tightly in my hand. I needed answers, but that feeling of being hunted was creeping back. They were closing in, and I had no idea where I was going. All I knew was that whatever was in the shadows wanted to take me back. Then suddenly I tripped and fell hard onto the forest floor. My breath escaped me. Gasping, I scrambled to get up, but felt something cold wrap around my ankle, rooting me to the spot. Panic surged as I realized I wasn't alone. Something was lurking in the dark, and I was about to find out what it wanted. I fought against the grip holding me down, kicking wildly, but it only tightened. My heart raced as another chill wrapped around me, creeping up from my ankle. Was it a vine, a root, or something far worse? I twisted and turned, desperation fueling my movements. The whispers returned, softer now, dripping with something that felt like mockery. "Stay with us." Their voices seemed to echo from everywhere, a chorus of torment. I stopped struggling for a brief moment, crouching low, my breath shallow. Then I spotted it. A pale hand emerging from the shadows beneath the underbrush. My stomach turned. It was skeletal, finger bones elongated like branches, and it reached for me. It felt like every horror story I had ever read collided in that moment. I pulled harder, yanking my leg with all my strength, and finally, the cold grip released its hold. I scrambled to my feet, adrenaline pushing me now. I had to keep moving. The figures were still in the periphery, too quiet, too watchful. I sprinted into the trees, branches clawing at my skin, the underbrush tugging at my legs. The forest felt alive, each sound amplifying the dread. I could hear snapping twigs and soft whispers echoing behind me, urging me to stop. Somewhere in the chaos, I remembered the locket. I fished it from my pocket, needing to know more. The photograph, those women, who were they? I needed something to ground me, something to make sense of this unfolding nightmare. It felt as if the answers I sought were embedded in that small piece of metal. As I ran deeper into the woods, I slipped it around my neck. Suddenly, a warm sensation spread across my chest. I paused, trying to comprehend what was happening. The whispers seemed to grow quieter, the panic retreating for just a moment. And then, off in the distance, I saw a light breaking through the trees, faint but insistent. Hope surged within me. Maybe it was a sign of safety, a path out of this madness. I dashed toward it, ignoring the way the shadows shifted and the whispers tried to pull me back. But as I approached, the glow morphed into something twisted. It wasn't a welcoming light, but a flickering flame that danced strangely against the darkness. I entered a small clearing where the fire pit had been restored, the flames licking at the night sky. To my horror, I realized there were figures around the fire. They were not just watching me, they were waiting. I froze, heart pounding, horrified, yet drawn to the scene. The figures bore the same haunted gaze as the ones that had chased me moments before. They didn't seem to notice me yet, and that lifeless silence was deafening. Something in me screamed to retreat, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. Then a chilling melody began to rise from the center of the gathering, a haunting tune that reverberated in my bones. That's when I saw it, a tall woman in white, standing amidst the others. Her eyes glowed with a fire of their own, drawing me in. "Come closer," she beckoned, her voice a soft caress that both terrified and enticed me. I could either turn back or step into the flames of fate, but I was about to find out exactly what the shadows had planned for me. The choice hung heavy in the air, and I knew I couldn't stand still for long. The sound of the woman's voice echoed in my mind, drowning out the whispers that still lingered in the background. I felt a pull, as if the air thickened around me, urging me to step closer. Part of me screamed to run, but another part, curious and terrified, compelled me forward. With each step, the dancing flames emitted an odd warmth that soothed my racing heart. The figures around the fire began to sway, their movements slow and rhythmic. I tried to make sense of their faces, each one shadowed and twisted, but their eyes glinted with an unearthly light. I felt exposed, like prey encircled by hungry wolves. "What do you want?" I managed to stammer, my voice trembling despite my effort to sound strong. The woman in white smiled, her expression both comforting and unsettling. "We are here to welcome you. You've been chosen." Chosen? The word struck a chord deep within me. My fingers brushed the locket against my chest. Suddenly, the memory of the photograph flashed into my mind, the faces of the women looking back, frozen in time. What had they done? Who had they been? Questions raced through my mind faster than I could comprehend. "Chosen for what?" I asked, my voice little more than a whisper. The fire crackled, and the flames seemed to leap higher, casting eerie shadows on the figures. "To join us, of course," she replied, her tone almost melodic. "You've felt their call. The bond of our past is within you." My instincts screamed to flee, but I couldn't move. I felt anchored as if the ground beneath me had become quicksand. I glanced at the others around the fire. They wore faces of longing and despair, eyes hollow, yet filled with something almost pleading. That's when I noticed the locket glowing faintly. The warmth intensified around my chest, and the other figures began to chant, their voices blending into a haunting harmony. The woman raised her hands, and a sense of urgency surged through me. They weren't waiting for an answer, they were expecting something. A shudder ran down my spine. I had seen the way they moved, the way they swayed, like moths drawn to a flame. And I was now starting to realize that I was the moth. Just then, the fire flickered violently, and a sharp gust of wind cut through the clearing. The figures hesitated, their attention shifting toward the darkness. Anxiety prickled at the nape of my neck. What were they looking at? I turned my head to follow their gaze, and there it was. A shadowed figure emerged from the tree line, tall and dark, with an unnatural presence. My breath hitched as it stepped closer, an aura of foreboding tightening around me. Fingers gripping the locket, I backed away slowly. I instinctively knew this wasn't just another figure in the shadows. Something compelled me to turn and run, but the cloying magic of the clearing held me still. I was caught between the woman's inviting glow and the terrifying figure approaching from the dark. In that moment, I realized the whispers weren't just beckoning me, they were warning me. And as the shadow loomed, I could either face it or surrender to the fate that began to feel inescapable. A decision hung in the air, pressing down on me like lead. With every ounce of strength left, I took a step back. Would I finally confront the darkness, or would I flee back into the forest? I took a shuddering breath and turned to the encroaching shadow. The wispy shapes around the fire twisted and shifted, nervous energy radiating through them. I could feel their hope and fear conflicting, some urging me to stay, while others recoiled at the malevolence slipping into our fragile sanctuary. "Help me," the dark figure rasped, though the voice held no warmth or plea. There was something deeply threatening in its call, and dread weighed heavily in my chest. I clenched the locket, feeling its cool metal against my skin. The faces of the women from the photograph danced before my eyes. They had seemed so full of life. The warmth in their smiles betrayed nothing of the dark destiny that awaited me here. Were they victims too, or guardians caught in a cycle of tragedy I was now a part of? The woman in white turned her gaze toward the figure. "It doesn't belong here," she murmured. Confusion overwhelmed me. Was she casting me into a battle against the very thing I feared? I glanced back at the shadow, its face still hidden in the deepening darkness, but the weight of it pressed in. "What do you want from me?" I yelled, my voice piercing through the tension like a knife. It echoed back, swallowed by the forest. "Your essence," it replied with a tone like gravel. "Your will to survive." Suddenly, a terrible energy crackled through the air. The figures around the fire leaned closer, their expressions morphing from longing to desperation. "You must choose," one of them cried, their voice tinged with urgency. "Join us or face it alone." I refused to let panic take me. Summoning every drop of courage, I squared my shoulders. "I won't give in to you," I shouted, turning back to the woman in white, my only source of warmth in this frigid nightmare. "Then you will not break the cycle," she replied, voice soft yet resolute. As the shadow continued advancing, its form crystallizing into sharp angles and grotesque nuances, I realized this was not just an entity seeking vengeance. It embodied all the torment that this place had held. It was every anguished soul crying for recognition. I took a step forward, into the light of the fire, the heat enveloping me. "I won't be part of this," I declared, voice steady. My resolve held firm like a shield. "If you're seeking to drag others into your despair, you'll have to go through me first." The shadow recoiled, as if my defiance had pierced through its core, a flicker of uncertainty crossing over its bleak countenance. I felt the locket warm against my chest as the fire ignited brighter, burning away the darkness creeping into our haven. "Together," the woman urged, her voice rising above the din. "You can break the bonds that tie us." Channeling every ounce of emotion, I concentrated, visualizing light pushing back against encroaching shadows. I joined the others, hearts racing. I could feel their essence intertwining with mine, a warm breeze lifting me higher, urging me to share my strength. With a resounding roar, the fire erupted, firelight illuminating the shadow's grotesque features. It screamed, reverberating through the clearing, raw fear palpable in its tone. The figures around the fire pulsated, the incantation growing stronger as we fought against the darkness together. "Help me," it sobbed, more human now but still rooted in malice. "No," I cried, breaking free of its grasp. "You will not lure me into despair." The light engulfed us all, twisting and swirling in wild patterns before congealing into a blinding burst. For a moment, the landscape shook, and I felt myself lift as the shadows screamed and writhed, flaking away like ash in a breeze. And then silence. I collapsed against the ground, gasping for breath, the weight of shadows lifting. The only sound was the crackling of the dying embers in the fire pit. The clearing was transformed, the burden of anguish finally lifted. The figures, once caught between hope and despair, dispersed, their echoes fading like a distant melody. I lay there, the quiet enveloping me like a cocoon. I expected to feel triumphant or liberated, but instead the victory felt hollow. Rising to my feet, the forest loomed larger, transformed yet still mystifying, a realm suspended between light and shadows. Though I had escaped the darkness, a part of me could never shake the feeling that remnants lingered, a piece of the past that would follow me, haunting my thoughts no matter where I went. As I walked away from that clearing, locket still hanging around my neck, I knew my journey was far from over. The world held mysteries I might never understand, supernatural or natural, and I would have to carry the weight of that ambiguity with me, always questioning what truths lurked just beyond the shadows that I might step into again. I suppose that's part of the journey. When confronted with darkness, you either choose to stand firm or run into the night. But you also leave behind a sliver of yourself, something tethered to those moments that shape you, forever entangled in the dance of light and shadow.